Alright, this is your lecture on semicolons, quotation marks, apostrophes, and hyphens. We're going to begin with semicolons. Semicolons behave a lot like periods, but they join two independent clauses or sentences together instead of using a coordinating conjunction. This indicates that the two clauses or sentences should be considered closely related. In the following sentence, in place of the semicolon, we could have instead used a comma and the word but. The cats eat their meals on the counter. The dogs eat their meals on the floor. A semicolon is also used between two independent clauses when a transition or follow-on effect is indicated. Common transitional expressions include therefore, additionally, further, moreover, likewise, for instance, namely, indeed, and finally. Use a comma after them. We love camping. However, it is too cold this time of the year. She will dress you like someone to take seriously. For example, she knows exactly what shoes and watches were fashionable. Semicolons can also be used with lists of lists or with lists of things that contain commas. For example, the delivery included sweets like butterscotch, caramel, and toffee, spices like cinnamon, ginger, and nutmeg, and baking staples like flour, baking powder, and salt. All right, the next thing we're going to look at is quotation marks. Right. Direct quotations are reproductions of someone's exact words. Indirect quotations rephrase or summarize their words. Quotations can have a powerful effect if you choose strong, vivid passages that are better than anything you could write yourself and that come from a respected person or expert. But it's also easy to overquote, particularly when you have a lot of source material. Then you'll end up with a patchwork that is hard to understand. When you're looking for good quotations, I'll try to speak English. When you're looking for good quotations to use, don't just take anything off the internet. A remarkable number of falsely attributed quotes are passed around, even at the highest levels, including by presidents, senators, best-selling authors, and top musicians. Even something attributed to Bartlett's, a famous compiler of quotations, may be wrong. Instead, make sure you're getting the quotation directly from something you know was written by the person you want to quote. I have included a very reliable book of quotations in the further reading section. Which I'll give to you guys later, okay? That's from an old lecture. Alright, quotation marks are used around direct quotations of written or spoken language or fictional dialogue said by characters. They are called quote marks, or just quotes for short. The first of the pair is the opening or open quote. It curves to the right. The second one is the closing or closed quote, and it curves to the left. Most North American writers will mostly use double quotation marks. In the United States, commas and periods go inside quotation marks. However, in the United Kingdom, single quotes are far more likely to be used, and commas and periods go outside. This is an example. So this is the U.S. We are all ready for our new revolution, she said. I aim to be in front of that army. In the UK, it would look like this. See how they use one quote there, one quote there, then one there, and the period is on the outside. Oops, that doesn't go there. Back that up. Our periods go on the inside. But in the United Kingdom, they go on the outside. But in the United States, they go on the inside of the quotation. Okay? Now, I've noticed that several of you have made the mistake of putting them on the outside. I don't know if that might be because you've lived in Europe before, or if it's just a misunderstanding, but they do go on the inside of the quotes. Now, I'll go ahead and show you real quick here. If you are doing a page number for a citation, say the page number is 235, it would look like this. Okay, but that's not what's happening here. This is just simply dialogue. So dialogue looks like that. Okay. Some English users believe it's not logical for commas or periods to be inserted inside the quotation marks, especially if one is quoting printed matter and the commas and periods are not there in the original. However, English is not logical, and arguing about it on logical grounds is pointless. It's best to stick to the convention for most writing. This isn't a place for you to be an innovator. In fact, the logical argument is faulty because we all make all kinds of changes to what appears inside quotation marks, including deletions, additions, substitutions, and capitalization. But it all fits a standard set of universally accepted conventions that signals to the reader that something was done that may have altered the text, while still keeping the meaning and intent of the original. The convention of putting the commas and periods inside the quotation marks, by the way, is a typographical one. Periods and commas look better inside or more precisely under quotation marks. Under is how they look, thanks to kerning, which is the automatically controlled space between characters. Computers just slide the periods and commas under the close quote. One exception we may make is when quoting software code. In that case, a comma or period inside quotation marks could be misunderstood as being part of the code and could lead to undesirable programming outcomes. This is an example. See how that is on the outside? That's to show that it is not part of this written code here. Okay? That's why it is listed outside of that. Question marks behave differently than periods and commas unless they are part of the original quotation. They go outside the closing quotation rather than inside. So for example, do you think the song Sweet Caroline? What do you think of the song Sweet Caroline? I sing it for karaoke. That's because the quotation marks are for Sweet Caroline, not for the question itself. Okay? I think Are You Gonna Go My Way is inside, is because Are You Gonna Go My Way is actually the name of the song, where this is actually the question. Do you know the song? Sweet Caroline is not a song with a question mark. Do you see the difference? Okay. Usually when you're putting another set of quotation marks inside of quotation marks, you change them to single quotation marks. Oh, I didn't put an example of this up. You change them to single quotation marks. Again, the preceding software code example is an exception. You would keep the code unchanged. So I'm going to write this example for you. Oops. She said, when we heard Neil Diamond sing, and we heard, Neil Diamond sing Song Blue. Oops. Sorry guys, I'm on a laptop. sing, song, sung, blue, comma there, comma, one quotation mark. We became fans for life. We became fans for life. Oops. I don't know why it's doing that, and I don't care right now. Anyway. Well, alright, it's gonna bug me, so I'm gonna fix it. Yeah, that's what I thought. Single. Okay. And we're gonna fix that. There. Okay. Alright, so when we heard Neil Diamond sing Song Sung Blue, we became fans for life. So she said this, so that's the quotation mark for what she said. Now normally, Song Sung Blue would be a song inside quotation marks, correct? But you've already got quotation marks. So what do you do if you have quotation marks inside of quotation marks? That's when you use these single quotation marks. Okay? So that's what you do in that instance. When you are attributing a quote, you usually do it with a speaking verb and the quotation offset by a comma. Each speaker's turn is usually a new line of dialogue. She told me there's a ghost in the attic calling your name. I heard him say it, her sister said, more than once. Oops. There are too many reasons not to believe you, I answered. You see all the different ways that dialogue works? She told me in the beginning, and then there's a comma, the quotation marks. And then her sister said is in the middle. This way it shows you how that would look with the comma, quotation marks, and the comma, quotation marks. And then I answered is at the end here, and it shows you here how to start it and how to end it. Okay? When what is inside the quotation marks is a full sentence or an independent clause, capitalize the first letter as in the preceding examples. Do not capitalize it when it's a phrase or fragment. When quoting from a text, an attribution verb isn't always necessary as long as it is clear from the context where it comes from, such as this one. Gandhi had much to say about forgiving others. If forgiveness is an attribute of the strong, then blame must be an attribute of the weak. Okay, so that's a partial quote. Okay. However, if you are naming something as a quote or a similar piece of language, such as referring to the very quote you're going to quote, a colon may be appropriate, such in these cases. My father's favorite expression, oh, these two decided to be stinkers. These two belong together. And the program messed with it. Okay. Single. Still didn't quite do what I wanted to do, but okay. Alright, my father's favorite expression, slicker than a bucket of boiled okra. Well, here in the South we know what that means, don't we? The saying I like best is the old one, nobody dances at their own funeral. Well, oof. I hope not. That'd be kind of freaky. Especially if they were cremated, right? Ew. Alright. Another use of quotes is to attribute a well-known name, such as to provide a nickname for a person, place, or thing. such as Don the Sphinx Mossy, who pitched for the Cleveland Indians, was known as Ears. They call the neighborhood Louisiana, a corruption of Lower East Side by Spanish speakers. Shakespeare's Macbeth is called the Scottish play by superstitious actors. By the way, some fiction writers do not use quotation marks when they're trying to show what a character is thinking. You see these italicized words in a story like this instead of quotation marks. That usually indicates that the character is thinking inside of their own mind, not necessarily what the speaker is saying out loud or writing, okay? Like in the yellow wallpaper, she's making diary entries, so it's written like dialogue. But if it's the author thinking, then it's not for public consumption, so to speak, okay? We're in a heap of trouble now, Paul Bunyan told himself. I better go stock up on supplies, okay? An informal use of quotation marks shows doubt or sarcasm about a concept or thing by using them around a word or short phrase. It's not appropriate for formal writing, but if you see it somewhere in certain situations, you'll know that it's being used for sarcasm. She invited me into her castle, which was a stack of old packing crates. Oh, you have a best-selling novel on the way, do you? How nice for you. On casual signs, you will often see quotation marks used to emphasize a word or phrase. Buy 'em by the sack. Usually that's like tomatoes or grapefruit, something, peaches, something like that. Please close the door on exiting. It's usually a plea, right? Please close this door. As a cashier who has stood by one of those front doors that tend to stick, it's usually because it's very hot or it's very cold right there in the opening, and all the air conditioning and all the heating is flowing out that door. So, all right. All this is incredibly common and is easily understood unless you prefer to pretend to misunderstand it. It is also highly informal and should be avoided in most writing. Instead, capitalize, underline, bold, or italicized words to emphasize them. When using a partial quote, use an ellipsis or a bracketed ellipsis with a space on each side to show where you remove text. An ellipsis is a single character made of 3 periods that indicates an elision or deletion. As Lincoln said in his Gettysburg Address, we were highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, should not perish from the earth. Now here is shown brackets. There's a space there that shouldn't be there. Shows brackets, but more commonly seen as just the 3 ellipses without the brackets, okay? All right, next is apostrophes. These are used to show possession. If the possessive noun is singular, just add an apostrophe followed by an S, such as Pete's father drove us to school. Do you like Martha's dress? If the possessive noun is plural, add only the apostrophe. The boys' bicycles are all blue. The editors' meeting is at 3 o'clock, which means there's a whole bunch of editors that are going to be at that meeting, okay? The possessive case of pronouns does not use an apostrophe. This is hers, his, theirs, its, ours, and yours. Its, if it's got an apostrophe, is actually it is, okay? Not the possessive. Occasionally, you'll find a singular noun that already ends with an S. When this happens, you can choose between adding an apostrophe or an S and an S, or just add an apostrophe. It was Coach Wood's fault, or Yeats's poem, or my favorite. I usually use, I'm not going to lie, I have a lisp with my S's, so I typically tend to just put an apostrophe so I don't have to say that second S and sound like a snake run away. But again, it's a matter of choice. Neither is wrong. Apostrophes are also used to indicate missing letters and contractions. From reading your essays, even after I've told you not to use contractions, I know that you all know how to do this. I can't see what you're doing. All right, next is hyphens. Use hyphens to form compound adjectives. A compound adjective is two or more words that modify a noun. I prefer up-to-date websites. A well-known painter will be there. Note that compound adjectives are hyphenated only when they appear before the noun. The websites I prefer are up to date. That is not hyphenated. The painter who will be there is well known. That is not hyphenated. Hyphens are also used to form compound nouns. Compound nouns are hyphenated regardless of their position in the sentence, such as father-in-law, jack-in-the-box, or great-grandmother. Hyphens are used to spell out compound numbers between 21 and 99, such as 24, 61, or 29th. Hyphens are used to spell out fractions that are used as adjectives. We saw a 1/3 increase in earnings this year. Note the fractions that are used as nouns are not hyphenated. 2/3 were counted as present. You should also hyphenate prefixes and suffixes to avoid confusion of words that are spelled alike, like recover the sofa, recover from the loss, recount money, recount a story, recreation of the scene, recreation area. All of those have different meanings. Recover means something different from recover. Recount is different from recount. Recreation is different from recreation. So you need to pay attention to those types of things. All right, that concludes your lecture on semicolons, quotation marks, apostrophes, and hyphens.